everyone, this is Lorraine. So today is an exciting video for me. So I have weaned my baby slash toddler. He's really a toddler. He is 17 months old. He just turned 17 months, I think 2 days ago. He just turned 17 months old and I finally weaned him for breastfeeding. I'm so happy. I am so happy. So I was forced into weaning him, and I think that that actually was a better process for me. But when it comes down to it, I don't think it was as hard as in my mind I thought it was going to be. So basically, let me tell you, I breastfed my baby. I exclusively breastfed from birth till 17 months. Like I think the day before he turned 17 months. So by the day he turned 17 months, he wasn't breastfeeding anymore. So happy. So I did that, and I didn't want to do it as long as I did. The only reason that I breastfed as long as I did is when you feed a baby for the first year, you want to either feed them formula or breast milk for the first year. That's their primary source of nutrition that first year of life. And so I breastfed and I had an easy time doing it, and so that's what I did. If I didn't have an easy time doing it, I have no problem with formula feeding. I said something on Facebook that just kind of, I don't know, it wasn't, I don't know. So I said on Facebook, I'm like, I finally weaned my son at 17 months, and people like congratulated me on breastfeeding for so long. And I thought how bizarre that was, because I'm like, nobody needs to congratulate me. Like, I just fed my baby. I think all parents then should be congratulated for feeding their baby. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So I don't know. The whole breastfeeding thing to me is bizarre, because I just wish people, instead of making it like, do you do this or do you do that? I wish people would just make it, I'm feeding my baby and I'm giving them the nutrients that they need. That's all it is. So that being said, whatever. Basically, I introduced solid foods at 6 months old, and he showed interest in food whenever we'd have food and everything, but he didn't like baby food. So we went into basically like the baby-led weaning, where we'd give him pieces of food and he'd kind of gnaw on it, chew it, whatever, and that was fine. But he really didn't take to food very well, and I don't think he's still a very, very particular eater, but he didn't take to food until he was probably like 14 months old. So in my mind, I didn't have a choice to stop breastfeeding. I just didn't feel as though he was eating enough for me to quit breastfeeding. So that's why I continued past the year point. And then I tried like a couple things in between to kind of stop him from breastfeeding. But my problem is I breastfed him for naps and I breastfed him to go to sleep. And so that, my fear was the sleep thing, because that's how I got him to go to sleep. And yeah, so I'm just gonna tell you now how I weaned and why it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was forced to wean him because I had a miscarriage. I'm not sad about it, so you don't have to apologize to me. I'm happy about it actually, because the pregnancy was not, I wasn't producing a healthy baby. I wasn't producing a healthy baby, and so everything happened as it should. However, when I went into the doctor's office, I didn't miscarry naturally, so the doctor told me that I could take pills to start the process. The pills, however, were pills that I couldn't continue to breastfeed taking the pills. I could continue 24 hours after the fact, but I couldn't do it for a period of time. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to breastfeed. What's going to have happen is I'm going to have my husband try to get the baby to fall asleep. And when I read online about people weaning their baby or toddler or whatever, it was always that the father would take over. And that didn't really work out for us. So what we did was the night I took my pills. I did breastfeed him during the day. And then I took the pills that I needed to take, and I couldn't breastfeed him after that point. I took them at about 7 o'clock at night, and Graham usually goes to bed around 7:30. But I always just kind of breastfed him, and then he'd go to bed. He started showing signs that he was tired, but I wanted to make him exhausted, so that, I don't know, I thought, like, in my mind it made sense, we need to make him exhausted. So I started, like, playing with him and distracting him until he was at the point where he was, like, extreme exhausted. So we did that until about 9:30. Prior to that, I had my husband go into bed with him because we do co-sleep, so that makes it a little bit harder, me being there. So I just had my husband go into bed with him, and he was like going wild. Like, he was crying, he went over to the door to try to get out. Like, it just wasn't a good thing for him. So then what we ended up doing is I just kind of exhausted him more, kept playing with him. The trick was to just exhaust him, to distract him. Like, when you're a parent of a toddler, the trick to being a parent of a toddler is distraction, the art of distraction, to make them happy at all times. If they start to get upset, you can distract them and make them happy again. So finally, I could tell that he was just beyond exhausted about 9:30, and I took him into bed with me and my husband, but I just made sure to have my boobs completely covered, and I held him like I normally do to breastfeed him to go to sleep. So it was still like the same positioning and everything. He cried and he cried and he cried, and when you hear a baby crying and it's your own baby, a minute feels like, it feels like the screaming crying, it feels like forever. It feels like 30 minutes. And if I didn't know that I couldn't breastfeed him, I think I would have given in, because I'm a sucker like that. But he only cried for about 10 minutes. It literally was 10 to 15 minutes, but they were like horrible cries, but he had his eyes closed, so I know that he was tired. If he still had his eyes open at that point, I would have taken him out of the room and tried to play with him some more to get him overly tired, if that makes sense. So that's basically how I got him to fall asleep. I kind of just rubbed his legs a little bit as I was holding him. Like, I hold him like this to go to sleep. So he had his head here, he was laying there, and I kind of rubbed his, like, massaged his legs, and finally he just fell asleep. And he kind of was like going like in his sleep, because he was upset. But he finally fell asleep. He did wake up at about 1 or 1:30, and same thing, I did what I would do if he woke up while I was breastfeeding. I moved him to the other side, and I just kind of rubbed him, and he fell back asleep. He woke up then at 3:30, and the problem then was that he was a little bit more awake. Like, he sat up in his sleep, like he does that sometimes, and I would breastfeed him and he'd go back to sleep. But he sat up in his sleep, and so then I offered him food, and he had a snack at 3:30 in the morning. So I think he just didn't eat enough because he was used to breastfeeding. So I gave him a snack. So I suggest having, like, snacks available if this is going to be the case for you. I gave him some cheese and some of his Pirate's booty. And then he fell back asleep till about 6 o'clock in the morning. And normally at 6 o'clock in the morning, he then breastfeeds. And usually it's like somewhere between 6 and 7 that he wakes up. Usually more 7, but because of the trauma he was going through, it was 6 o'clock. And I just immediately got him up and started giving him food. And that was that. And it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. It really was easy. And then as far as napping goes, I haven't gotten napping down quite to a science yet, because he's not, like, at nap times he's not as exhausted as he is during the nighttime. So his nap time, I can either, like, take him in a stroller ride and he'll fall asleep, or I can take him in the car and he'll fall asleep in the car when I know he's tired. He has, like, kind of headbutted me towards my boobs a couple days when he was like getting that exhausted thing and a little bit hungry. So I just would offer him food, and if he wasn't in the mood to eat, then I would like either take him for a little ride in a stroller, or I'd put him in the car and he'd pass out in the car, and I'd just take a ride and go wherever I needed to go. So my tips for this weaning process thus far is do the weaning whenever you're not going to work the next day, maybe when your spouse is not going to work the next day, because that's part of it. I don't want to like make my husband overly exhausted before he goes into work. So I did it on a Saturday night. My husband doesn't work on Sunday and he doesn't work on Monday. So I did it really because I was having my issues and I was going to bleed, and I needed my husband to be there to take care of the baby in the process. But this weaning thing has been really, really great. Some other things that I wanted to share with you. Because the next night it was easier. It just got easier. He didn't even, I think he cried for maybe like a minute the next night. And then he fell asleep, and I do believe that he woke up a couple times, but same thing, I switched arms, and I would just kind of switch him back and forth, just not letting him even like grab into my shirt or anything, and it worked out so beautifully. And then the third night, which was last night, we all laid in bed, and he actually cuddled a little bit with my husband before we fell asleep, which was nice because he didn't cuddle before. He would just like immediately want to grab at my boobs and eat, especially if I sit down or anything. Now he cuddles, and it's so sweet. But last night, I kind of wanted to give him a little snack before bed, so I got his little Pirates booty, and we laid in the bed, and we had Finding Nemo on. He's not a big TV watcher, but like he relaxed, he laid back, and he like was eating his popcorn, and he just fell asleep with the little little bag that I had in a Ziploc bag. He fell asleep with it in his hand, and he slept really well last night. That was the third night, and he slept really well. He did wake up at one point in the middle of the night, and I just put him on my arm, which he actually was sleeping all by himself in the center of the bed. I put him on my arm, and he fell back asleep immediately. And then he didn't wake up this morning until about 8 o'clock. So I think that he's actually getting better rest. He's actually happier during the day, not grabbing at my boobs. He's like wanting to like kind of cuddle up with mommy, but not grab at my boobs. And it's so amazing. I hear people all the time say like, oh, I don't want to breastfeed because I really like this, I miss breastfeeding and blah, blah, blah. And I think that this is like the greatest experience ever. I really honestly, truly do. He cuddles. It's so sweet now. Before it was just like, I was a milk machine. And I feel like so much more love coming from him when he's not constantly grabbing at my boobs. A couple questions I got asked was, he's showing any signs of weaning? He wasn't showing any whatsoever. I was ready to be done, but I wasn't forcing it upon him. I tried a couple things. I tried to give him like a bottle. The night that I knew that I was gonna have to take the pills, I did actually buy formula and put it in a bottle, and he tried it probably around 7:30 or something, and he looked at us completely disgusted. And I'm kind of glad that he didn't like the milk, because I think weaning a bottle is difficult too, meaning like he'd have to drink a bottle of like milk every night before he went to bed. That was another thing. He didn't like cow's milk either. So that's part of the reason I continued to breastfeed as long as I did. But my experience weaning has been really, really wonderful. Don't you feel he's been so much happier?
Yes.
He's been so happy. Brian never got to cuddle with him before. How does that make you feel now, Brian?
It feels awesome.
Does it? It's really a nice experience. The crying the first night literally was only about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all.
I think you just have to wear out the baby because, and you have to be prepared to be up, because he did go to bed prior to that at about 7:30. Every night he's been going to bed about 9:30. But we've been just making sure to get him really to the point where he is really truly exhausted. Where before I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of tired, and I'd be like lazy, and I'd be like, oh, he's showing signs of being tired, and then I'd be like, put the boob in your mouth and go to sleep, and then he'd go to sleep after he drank milk. My boobs at the moment are the biggest they've ever been. I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're the biggest they've ever been. I asked my doctor about it, and he said, do not express any milk from them because that will stimulate more milk production, so I haven't. He said it'll take about 48 hours, which I feel like it's been about 48 hours, and they're still huge. They hurt. Actually, they're starting to feel a little bit looser now. He told me to put cold compresses on them, which I haven't done, which probably would speed up the process more. He told me to wear a... So I've been wearing sports bras. I don't know what else to say. I just feel very, very good about this point. And because of him not necessarily like needing me, like he still is waking up and still wanting my touch and everything in the middle of the night, he is becoming more independent in this process. And I see that in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna be the mom that gets stuck breastfeeding until he's like 5 years old. He's gonna sleep in bed with us forever. And you don't ever hear about people like anybody, you don't ever hear, you hear about like kids up to like 5 years old breastfeeding. You don't hear about like, you don't hear about 10-year-olds breastfeeding. You do, I don't know, I slept with my parents for a long time, but I see that the transition is going to happen. And it's been a very, very smooth transition. He's really getting more independent there. I think pretty soon he'll start coming into the bed and laying down when he's tired. It really feels like a good thing. I can update you all more with questions that you may have. I really feel good about this. It just feels like right. It feels like the right time and everything. I commented on my Facebook wall. I said, do you have any questions about this? And one of the comments that I got was that someone said that if you don't do it prior to 18 months old, they start to remember, and so it gets a little bit more difficult. And I can see that because all of a sudden it seems like he's forgotten that he breastfeeds. He still grabs at my shirt maybe a couple times, but like 3 days and he's kind of forgotten that that's what he does. I've avoided like him seeing my boobs and stuff. I've really avoided that because I don't want him to even like think about it. But it's amazing. You want to come to mommy? No, he wants to play with daddy. I don't know. I'm just so excited. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them below. I think that I talked about everything. I might do like maybe a more experience. I don't know. Ask questions if you have them, because I might do a second video on this because I kind of feel like it's a little bit scattered. But I feel like it's great. I feel like this is the best thing that's ever happened. Yeah, so goodbye.